What's good, gang? I'm Jorby. I make music, and I have a ton of nerdy hyperfixations that my family's getting really tired of hearing about, so I made my own YouTube series to yap about them. In this series, we'll take a deep dive into plot devices, concepts, and narratives used in my favorite media, but I'm adding a twist. During the creation of each essay, I'll also be making an original song inspired by the theme of the video. At the end of the episode, I'll be playing you that new song to close things out. So get comfy, grab a snack, or lock in with whatever you're doing and enjoy the app sesh. And as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on these stories in the comments below. In the last episode, we explored how grief can shape a character. But what happens when there's nobody to grieve? What if there's no one who truly understands you? Loneliness is a silent killer in today's world, creeping into our lives in ways that we don't always recognize. It can be quiet and invisible, slowly consuming someone over time. Or it can be an unbearable weight that crushes the spirit. Just as in real life, loneliness is a defining struggle for many fictional characters. Some try to escape it, others learn to live with it, and some let it consume them entirely. In this episode, we'll examine 5 characters, each of whom experiences loneliness in profoundly different ways. By exploring their struggles, we might better understand our own battles with isolation and the many paths that one could take when faced with the question, what do you do when you're truly alone? Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you? In The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask, Skull Kid serves as a tragic representation of how loneliness can shape and distort a character's actions. Beneath his mischievous and destructive behavior lies a deep emotional wound, a longing for connection and a fear of abandonment. Skull Kid's story begins with rejection. Once friends with the 4 giants, he was left feeling abandoned when they were called to protect the 4 corners of Termina. Feeling betrayed and forgotten, Skull Kid masked his pain with mischief, using pranks and chaos as a way to gain attention. But his loneliness lingered. Even when he found new companions in the fairies Tattle and Tail, the hole left by his former friends remained unfilled. When Skull Kid stumbled upon Majora's Mask, his pain and longing for recognition became twisted and distorted into a volatile thirst for destruction. The mask amplified his feelings of isolation and anger, turning his pranks into a dangerous quest for control. The impending apocalypse he brought upon Termina wasn't just about power. It was a desperate cry for validation, a twisted attempt to make the world pay attention to him. But the most haunting manifestation of Skull Kid's loneliness is found inside the moon. After Link defeats the 4 boss monsters and frees Termina's temples, he confronts Skull Kid. When this happens, the mask leaves him, retreating to its final battleground, a surreal, dreamlike version of the moon. Here, the player meets the Moon Children, mysterious figures wearing the masks of Termina's guardians. The Moon Children are eerily innocent, yet profoundly unsettling. They pose questions about morality and relationships, asking Link things like, "Your friends, what kind of people are they? I wonder, do these people think of you as a friend?" These questions echo Skull Kid's own fears of abandonment and his desperate desire to be seen and understood. The moon's emptiness, a serene meadow, mirrors the void within Skull Kid, a place where loneliness has taken root. Ultimately, Skull Kid's arc comes full circle. After Majora's Mask is defeated, Skull Kid is freed from the mask's influence, his vulnerability finally exposed. The four giants return, not to punish him, but to forgive him. Their words, "Forgive your friends and remember them," reaffirm their bond and offer Skull Kid a chance at redemption. His story ends not with solitude, but with reconnection, as he learns that even after mistakes and understandings, true friends can still be there for you. The Moon Children are never seen again after Majora's defeat, leaving behind a lingering sense of unease. If the giants represent Skull Kid's healing and connection, the Moon Children might symbolize the scars and doubt left by his loneliness. Skull Kid's story reminds us that loneliness can lead to harmful extremes if left unaddressed. But it also shows us the path to healing, forgiveness, acceptance, and a willingness to reconnect. In a world as isolated and fractured as Termina, it's these small acts of understanding that bring true resolution. The sin I committed was turned back on me. With that sin turned back on me, I learned I was deserving of punishment. And so, I became isolated. In a silent voice, Shoya Ishida's story is a poignant exploration of how loneliness can consume a person, and how connection and redemption can begin to heal even the deepest wounds. From the very start of his arc, Shoya is defined by isolation, a product of his past actions, the consequences of those actions, and his internalized guilt. As a child, Shoya was outgoing and reckless, but his mischief turned cruel when he began bullying Shoko Nishimiya, a deaf girl who transferred into his class. His actions were driven by ignorance, a need for acceptance from his peers, and a failure to understand Shoko's struggles. However, when the consequences of his bullying became unavoidable, Shoya found himself ostracized. His classmates turned on him, and he became the new target of ridicule. The experience of being bullied himself left Shoya profoundly lonely. Over time, his guilt over what he had done to Shoko grew unbearable, and he began to isolate himself entirely. He cut off friendships, avoided eye contact, and convinced himself that he was undeserving of connection or forgiveness. The film brilliantly visualizes Shoya's isolation through the use of floating X's that cover people's faces, symbolizing his total detachment from those around him. But Shoya's story doesn't end in isolation. His decision to reconnect with Shoko marks the turning point of his arc. He seeks her out not just to apologize, but to find some way to make amends. This step requires immense courage because it forces Shoya to confront the cause of the shame and loneliness he's carried for years. Shoko, who also struggles with feelings of loneliness and self-worth, initially hesitates to reconnect with him, but eventually allows him back into her life. Their relationship becomes the heart of the story as both characters slowly begin to heal together. Through his interactions with Shoko, Shoya starts to see the value of himself and others, slowly peeling away the layers of guilt and self-loathing that have defined him. The X's over people's faces begin to fall away as Shoya opens himself up to new friendships and begins to forgive himself. Shoya's loneliness had driven him to the brink of despair, but his journey shows that even when a person feels irreparably disconnected, there's always hope for reconnection. His redemption doesn't come from erasing his past, but from acknowledging it, taking accountability, and striving to be better. Starting tomorrow, I'll look everyone in the eye. The film's climax, where Shoya symbolically lifts his head and looks directly at the people around him, is a powerful moment of catharsis. For the first time in years, he feels a sense of belonging. His loneliness, while never fully erased, no longer defines him. Instead, it becomes a part of his story, a reminder of where he's been and how far he has come. Shoya Ishida's arc is a love letter to the transformative power of connection. It shows that even in the depths of loneliness, the courage to reach out and the willingness to forgive both oneself and others can create a path to healing. His story resonates deeply in a world where many feel isolated, reminding us that redemption and connection are always possible, no matter how lost we feel. It feels like someone took a shovel and dug out all my insides. And I know there's nothing in there. But I'm still too nervous to open myself up and check. I know there's something wrong with me. My parents know it too, even if they don't say anything. In I Saw the TV Glow, Owen stands as a haunting example of how loneliness and fractured identity can define a person's existence. His journey is shaped by isolation, strained relationships, and a profound disconnect between the person he presents to the world and the person he is inside. It's a story that delves into the struggles of self-acceptance and the consequences of denying one's true self, all while leaving the final outcome open to interpretation. Owen, portrayed by Justice Smith, is a high school student grappling with feelings of alienation and uncertainty. The only refuge lies in his friendship with Maddie, portrayed by Bridget Lundy Payne, who shares his fascination with the Pink Opaque, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer-esque TV show that becomes their safe haven. The show represents more than escapism. It's a world where they feel seen, a shared connection that momentarily bridges the loneliness they each face. However, the Pink Opaque also reflects something deeper for Owen, a metaphor for his suppressed identity. He sees himself in Isabel, a character on the show who symbolizes the identity he's buried as he struggles with understanding and accepting himself as a trans person. This connection to the show provides comfort, but also deepens the chasm between his true self and the person he believes he must be to survive. As Maddie begins to embrace her true identity, paralleling the character Tara from the Pink Opaque, the gap between her and Owen widens. While Maddie moves forward with courage, Owen's fears and insecurities paralyze him. His hesitation to confront his feelings leaves him more isolated than ever, driving a wedge into the one meaningful relationship he has. Owen's growing obsession with the Pink Opaque mirrors his struggle to reconcile his internal and external worlds. The show becomes not just a sanctuary, but an obsession, pulling him further away from reality as he clings to it for validation and understanding. This fixation exacerbates his loneliness and fractures his connection to Maddie, leaving him trapped in his internal conflict. What if she was right? What if she had been telling the truth? What if I really was someone else? Someone beautiful and powerful? Someone buried alive and suffocating to death, very far away on the other side of a television screen. But I know that's not true. That's just a fantasy. Kid stuff. The film's climax presents Owen with a choice: to embrace his identity as Isabel or continue suppressing it. The film's ending leaves this decision open to interpretation, allowing viewers to speculate on whether Owen finds the courage to accept himself or succumbs to the weight of his fears. Some viewers see hope in Owen's journey, believing that he may eventually find the strength to live as his true self, while others interpret his fate as a tragic descent into further isolation. This ambiguity reflects the complexity of real-life struggles with identity and self-acceptance, making Owen's story deeply personal and universally resonant. Owen's story illustrates the devastating effects of loneliness born from a suppressed identity. His fractured sense of self leaves him unable to connect with others in a meaningful way. And his growing isolation leads to a cycle of self-doubt and despair. Through Owen, I Saw the TV Glow explores how social pressures and internalized fear can prevent people from embracing their true selves, ultimately deepening their loneliness and crippling their ability to connect on any meaningful level. Owen's character is a tragic and complex depiction of loneliness, self-denial, and the human need for connection. His story resonates with anyone who's ever felt unseen, misunderstood, or trapped by social expectations. The ending of I Saw the TV Glow leaves us with unanswered questions, challenging us to reflect on our own interpretations of Owen's journey. Did he embrace his identity and break free from his isolation? Or did his fears consume him? Through Owen, the film delivers a poignant reminder. The path to self-acceptance is fraught with challenges, but connection, whether to others or to oneself, is the key to escaping loneliness. Without it, even the brightest glimmers of hope can fade into the static. "50 years have passed, but I do not age. Time has lost its effect on me. The suffering continues. Aku's grasp chokes the past, present, and future. All hope is lost. Got to get back. Back to the past. Samurai Jack." Throughout Samurai Jack, our main character is no stranger to solitude. From the moment Aku casts him into the distant future, Jack is alone, forced to navigate an unfamiliar world without the support of his family, homeland, or even the trappings of the time period he once knew. Upon seeing the destruction and chaos taking place in this future, Jack's quest is singular: to return to the past and undo Aku's tyranny. But in pursuing this mission, Jack lives a life of isolation, wandering from place to place, never able to stay, never able to build lasting relationships. Yet despite this loneliness, Jack carries himself with a remarkable sense of inner peace. He's a warrior bound by discipline, meditation, and an unwavering sense of purpose. His solitude is not just a byproduct of his journey, it's something he endures with patience and grace. While many characters in fiction crumble under isolation, Jack uses it as an opportunity for self-reflection and growth. His commitment to his mission gives him a reason to persist, and his deep connection to his upbringing and moral code helps him stay grounded even when the weight of his solitude grows heavy. As the years pass, Jack's solitude becomes an unbearable burden. By the time we reach season 5, 50 years have gone by and Jack has still not found a way to return to the past. He no longer ages, but his spirit begins to wither. The possibility of a vibrant future has become a bleak, never-ending landscape, and Jack is beginning to lose hope. Nowhere is this more apparent than in episode 6 of season 5, where Jack reaches his lowest point. Alone in a ruined wasteland, he finds himself haunted, literally and figuratively, by his past self. In a striking moment, Jack sits on the ground, head lowered, as his hallucination of his younger self appears before him. But rather than offering encouragement, this version of Jack is cruel, almost taunting.
You failed them. You failed your family. You failed your kingdom. You failed your people.
This past self, the version of Jack that still had hope, has become his greatest tormentor. He tells Jack that there's only one way out, and it rhymes with sewer slide, implying that after all this time, there's no honor left in continuing the fight. It's a chilling moment because for the first time in the series, we see Jack genuinely consider it. He has always endured, always pushed forward, but now the sheer weight of his loneliness and repeated failure has brought him to the edge. What makes this scene so powerful is that it shows how even the strongest, most disciplined warrior can succumb to despair when left alone for too long. Jack's solitude, once a source of strength, has now become his prison. Without companionship, without hope, even a warrior of his caliber can lose his way. But Jack does not give in. What ultimately pulls him back from the brink is connection. Meeting Ashi, one of the daughters of Aku, is a turning point. Though she begins as his enemy, Ashi eventually comes to admire Jack, realizing that Aku has poisoned her mind since birth. Through their growing bond, Jack finds a reason to keep going. He's no longer alone. He sees hope in the people who still believe in him, and that reminder is enough to pull him out of his downward spiral. Jack's journey is a stern reminder to keep the balance between solitude and connection. While he spends much of his life alone and even finds strength in it, his story ultimately shows that isolation without purpose can be dangerous. Inner peace is vital, but so is allowing oneself to find connection and meaning through others. In the end, it is not just his skill or discipline that saves Jack. It's his ability to reconnect with the world around him, proving that even the strongest warriors need someone to stand beside them.
If love is just a word, why does it hurt so much when you realize it isn't there?
Few characters embody the destructive power of loneliness as Gaara from Naruto does. From birth, he was marked as different, forced to live in near total isolation due to the one-tailed beast inside him. Feared and hated by his own village, Gaara was raised to believe that he was a weapon, not a person. His own father, the Kazekage, saw him as a failed experiment and repeatedly tried to have him assassinated. Even his caretaker, Yashimaru, the only person who seemed to care for him, ultimately betrayed him, revealing that he had never loved Gaara and had only been following orders. This was the moment Gaara lost faith in the idea of human connection. With no one to love him, Gaara turned inward, convincing himself that he could only find meaning through violence. If the world saw him as a monster, he would embrace that role, believing that killing others was the only way to affirm his own existence, since it has been what he's been doing. This extreme response to loneliness makes him a tragic mirror to Naruto, who grew up similarly isolated, but chose to seek out companionship instead of rejecting it. Where Naruto found strength in forming bonds, Gaara tried to erase his pain through fear and destruction. It isn't until Gaara faces Naruto that he finally begins to break free from his self-imposed prison of loneliness. Seeing someone with a nearly identical path choose love and connection over hatred forces Gaara to question everything he believed. He realizes that his loneliness was not inevitable. It was a consequence of the choices he made in response to his pain. This revelation leads him down a path of redemption where he eventually becomes a leader who fights to protect his people rather than destroy them. Gaara's story is a cautionary tale that says loneliness, when left unchecked, can become a dangerous force. It can twist a person into something unrecognizable, fueling cycles of violence and self-destruction. But just as Naruto showed Gaara, there's always another path. Loneliness doesn't have to be the end of the story. It can be the beginning of change.
I hated this world and all its people, and thought about destroying both. But then, a single shinobi from the Hidden Leaf stopped me. He cried for me. I was his enemy, yet still he cried for me. And he called me his friend even though we had battled. He saved me. We were on different sides, but we were both Jinchuriki.
I'm just a letdown. I'm just a letdown. Just a letdown.
Unfortunately, loneliness is a universal experience, but as we've seen, it affects everyone differently. Some, like Shoya Ishida, isolate themselves out of guilt, believing that they're undeserving of connection, only to realize that healing is only possible through others. Some, like Gaara, embrace their isolation with violence, convinced that establishing fear in others is the only way to prove their existence valid, until they're shown a different path. Others, like Samurai Jack, learn to endure solitude with quiet strength. But even the strongest minds can break under the pressure of isolation. And then there's Owen, whose loneliness is so deeply intertwined with his fractured sense of self that he struggles to see a way forward at all. Each of these characters stands at a crossroads, much like many of us do in real life. Do we shut ourselves away? Do we lash out? Do we find ways to live with our loneliness? Or do we let it consume us? Fiction has the power to reflect our own struggles. And in these stories, we find not just sorrow, but possibility. Because in the end, loneliness is not always a dead end. It's a road, and the direction that we take is up to us. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell and all that stuff so we can see each other again. Also, let me know if there's anything else that you guys would like to hear me yap about. But now, without further ado, here's the premiere of my new song on today's topic. It's called Lonely. And as of the release of this video, it can be streamed anywhere you can find music. Also, there's a link in the description. Subscribe.
Why the self-isolating? The only way to buffer solitude for the